Hey everyone, it's Backyard Conversations. We are back with the summer edition. I know you've missed us. We've been quite busy as always, but we're gonna try and make sure this backyard is as open as possible for you guys in the future, so you can come around with your the lemonade, your pina coladas, and hang out with us. But this is a special WWDC edition because Apple kind of like really took it to maybe a different level this year. They on June 5th, which is Monday, they invited some people out to Apple Park and they live streamed it. It's their big, you know, basically keynote event that happened on Monday. And Dapo and I are going to go into some kind of deep dive and talk about it. So let's get right into the show.
Yep, yep.
All right, so Dapo, I think we talked about this just before recording about how we want to, the format for this episode is to go in the sequence the way it was announced on the day.
Yeah.
And I know the first thing they came out guns blazing with the Mac. I want to know what your impressions are. Is there anything that stuck out to you? I should say anything that you really impressed you about the Mac announcements.
Uh, so the M2 Ultra finally getting, or let me say the Mac Pro finally getting the Apple Silicon treatment. Um, so now they have like a full expendable, I said expendable, extensible Mac Pro, you know, with M2, the super high-end processor. I'm curious to see people compare it with um, custom built PCs from with Intel chips and AMD chips. I'm curious to see how the performance will be, especially on the most spec'd out version. But I mean, finally, Apple has moved everything to M2. Um, and then the other thing that I noticed was the iMac is still on M1, like base level M1.
Yeah.
So I think I can't remember who I was telling, but I was saying that it seems like Apple really wants to reposition the iMac as a home computer. However, there are a lot of pros, creative professionals who want to have the iMac as their um, primary computer for work.
Right.
And it is a compelling computer to have for work because you have like this slim profile, so you can move it when you need to. You can fit on a desk, and you have like this high-end monitor attached to the computer. So it's a very good device for work. But the original positioning of the iMac, back in '98 was as a home computer. So I think them keeping or stifling the iMac from getting like higher end processors is a way of them like I don't know whether to say force, but people are still going to buy what they're going to buy, and it's a nice computer to have. So it seems like now they're saying, oh, if you're a creative professional, go and buy the Mac Studio or go and buy the Mac Mini. The problem with those is that A, they're more expensive. Well, the desktop alone is not more expensive, but if you buy it paired with Apple's cheapest monitor, which is $1,500, you're already spending about 2 grand, over 2 grand on the computer. So um, seems Apple saying if you're a creative professional, either buy a MacBook Pro, which starts at 2,000, or buy a Mac Mini or Mac Studio, which also starts at that price, plus an Apple Studio display. Anyway, and I like the iMac, so I want the iMac to get that update, whether they are positioning for home or for I mean, an iPad has an M2 processor in it now, so why are they stifling the iMac? Anyway, that's enough rant about the iMac not getting anything.
I
Um,
mean, I want to chime in on that on the iMac thing. I agree entirely because it felt like one of the like a middle child, right? They didn't talk about it much. It was just like, hey, here's the MacBook Air. Here's what's happening with the Mac Pro, but here's this iMac, which I know a lot of professionals use as their daily driver, even though it's still on the M1 because of how good the M1 really is. And I feel like September might be a time for them to announce a refresh. I am optimistic that in September they're gonna come through and be like, hey, here's the new iMacs with like newer, faster, better processors. But if you notice the color scheme on those iMacs, they're very akin to like the iPad Air. And the iPad
Mm,
Air is kind of like on its way to the iPad Pro, but not just Pro enough. Because I've seen iPad Air refreshes that come out and they're like twice more powerful than the iPad Pro of the previous generation. But
mm,
the iPad Air comes out with like this fun pop colors, and it's like, um, is that what they're doing with the iMac, where it's like it takes forever for it to get a refresh, but it comes with these funky colors, and it goes in line with what you said, with like it's being positioned as a home computer, funky colors, yellow, green, whatever. It's something to look out for in September. I do think they will announce in September. I don't think any MacBook Pro. Wait, they did announce a MacBook Pro at Dub, right?
no, they didn't. They didn't announce any MacBook Pros or any of these MacBook Pros. MacBook Pros are like pretty solid right now, the
Yeah,
current
yeah,
generation with the
they
M2s. In
are.
fact, I've seen a couple of reviewers say that after they finished reviewing the M2, they just went back to using their M1 Pros because the
Yeah,
M1 Pros were just that good.
yeah.
Um, so I think maybe the MacBook Pros would do probably an 18-month cycle as opposed to an annual cycle.
Yeah.
But speaking of MacBook, they did announce a 15-inch MacBook Air. What do you think about that?
I thought it was very interesting because the MacBook Air is very similar to what we're talking about with the iMac. It's this computer that's like positioned for like everyday use, slim profile. The original debut was the Manila folder like unveiling where it came out. It was so thin and light. And you look
Hmm?
at this computer that's like thin, fanless, but super powerful. And even if you're just a hobbyist editing photos and the occasional video editing, this thing is more than juiced up for you to do that with ridiculous battery life. And now on 15 inches, like 18 hours of battery life on something that's like a 15-inch monster. I feel like for the average Air user, it's overkill. But
Hmm.
I feel like because it's now 15 inches, it's like there's a new market they're trying to get into, like people who want the thin form factor. Because if you think about it, like a lot of 15-inch computer users are either on the average enthusiasts or gamers. Like, there's a lot of people like going for something that big, or maybe designers or somebody who creates on their computer. For content consumption, I don't really know a lot of people who always want the biggest and the baddest, and 15 inches does sound like in that category. So I don't really know what the target demographic is. I was talking to my wife about it. It's like 15-inch Mac. She's like, nope, she doesn't care for it. Like, obviously she's more of like the regular MacBook Air size, the 13-inch, I think it is. And so it's an interesting product, but I feel like for people who don't want to spend pro money and want a bigger screen and as good a battery life, like it doesn't get better than that. Like I feel like a lot of Windows manufacturers will struggle to compete with this 15-inch computer at that price.
Yeah. So my thoughts about the 15 inch is that Apple is actually playing the same game that Windows OEMs are playing with that particular device.
Yeah.
One is that they've always had, you know, a solid entry at the 1299 price point. And prior to the 15-inch launching, the only thing that was on that 1299 price point was the 13-inch M2 Pro, right? Which had the older design. And a lot of people were like, they didn't want to spend that much money for an older design. So they needed to put something in that price point. That's one. Secondly, is um, the 15 inch is actually the most common laptop size, right? Even for on the Windows side, so and Apple had treated Apple's laptop line was typically like on the smaller side. So even when,
Unless you go pro.
yeah, like so even for like if you look at the Windows side, right? A small Windows laptop, 14-inch was considered a small Windows laptop.
Say
Then
14 or
baseline,
13. Did you say 14 or
no,
13?
14 actually. For the longest time, it was Apple that actually popularized the 13-inch laptop. 14 was like the small laptop, 15 was your medium, and then 17 was your large. So now 17, the problem with 17 is that
I
it's
completely
super
forgot about
heavy, super,
17-inch
yeah,
laptops. Right.
there was a time they were around,
Yeah.
but they're huge, they're heavy. So now you can fit like large resolution. You can fit, a 2K display, even higher resolutions in a 16-inch. And Apple, with all their like fancy slimming everything down thing, were able to pull it off in their 16-inch Pros. So now, 15-inch, they want to now serve people who are used to having a 15-inch laptop or used to seeing a 15-inch laptop and have a Mac laptop that's 15-inch, but it's not Pro, because it being the most common means that it's like the everyman. Now, when I looked at the specs, there's something interesting, which is that the display, despite it being bigger, has a lower pixel density than the 13-inch Air, the new
Okay.
13-inch Air,
Yeah.
and the 14-inch Pro, right? So they didn't increase the pixels, they just increased the size
Size.
of the physical size of the display. I mean, they
Cut,
did increase the pixels, but
cutting
not
cutting
commensurate.
costs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, I don't think the difference is that much
To
that
the yeah, cause
you'll
those
be
displays are
saving.
super high resolution. Like I feel like unless you're a pixel peeper, you probably wouldn't complain much, right?
Yeah, yeah. Most people won't complain. Most people won't complain. Then the third thing I have, like, I noticed about it is that the previous Gen 13-inch Pros, right?
Yeah.
Um, which is like the current, they have a 13-inch Pro that is M2 now, but uses the old design,
Yeah.
right? This 15-inch Air actually weighs heavier than it. Now, of course, that weight is spread out over a much larger surface area, so it will feel super light. But the mere fact that it is heavier just like knocks out the idea of, the Air being like the lightest laptop. So I'm thinking that M2 13-inch Pro is on its way out. Apple might knock it out of the lineup completely, and just have everything be the new notch design and whatnot. Well, and
Right.
then the last thing was that the second generation of the Air actually had two sizes. I think they were doing 11 and 13. And so the Air actually had 11 and 2 sizes for some time before, they moved to, I think before they moved to like the unibody style. Um, but no, I think, yeah, before they moved to the unibody style.
Mm-hmm.
So now they've gone back to, the Air having two sizes. So now it's like there's just going to be two sizes of Air, two sizes of Pro, 13 and 15, 14 and 16, which is a much simpler, cleaner, neater lineup to have.
Right.
And then anyone who wants like something super cheap and basic can go for the M1 Air, which is still in the lineup. It should knock out. A lot of people are already discouraging people from buying it, so you might as well knock out the 13-inch M2 Pro.
It's interesting you said that, yeah, because you're right. Right now there's currently three variants for the Air, right? There's the 13 M1, the 13 M2, and then now the 15 M2, right? But I feel like the 13 and 15 M2 with like the new notch design are here to stay. That old
Mm-hmm.
design for the Air and the old design for the 13 Pro are just gonna be phased out. I think by this year, I don't think they're gonna make any more this year because by September when those announcements, I think Mac announcements are in September. I think the
I
second
don't
Apple
think we'll
event.
be getting any Mac announcements anymore this year. We're already halfway through
I
the
will be
year.
shocked if we don't. Because if you
Ah,
notice, with the M chips, they've been going annual.
well,
So
I guess that's because they are new, right?
yeah,
September is for iPhone and probably iPad. Um, this is already halfway through the year. The
yeah,
only thing I would expect them to do, I wouldn't even expect, like you were calling it a refresh. The only thing I would expect them to do, if they were going to do anything for the Mac, would be to upgrade the iMac. And it would just be a simple, oh, we took out the M1 and put in an M2, finish.
yeah.
I don't think it'll be anything fancy. I
Maybe this
think they'll
time,
keep. Yeah,
I was gonna
listening.
say maybe this time they'll make the power cable easier to yank out. Or
Hmm.
you know what? No, that was the Pro Display XDR, not the iMac. Remember when people
Yeah, I
try
think the
to
iMac.
the
Yeah,
the iMac cable I think is MagSafe, right? So it's pretty easy.
yeah.
But the Pro Display XDR, my goodness, there's literally a tool to actually yank out the power cable, and it's not like it breaks it. It's just like it's so hard to pull out
And
because
I
it
think
comes pre-installed with a cable.
yeah, they made it so that you don't take out the cable.
Yeah,
But the cable is detachable, maybe like when you take it in for repairs or something like that. So
yeah. Okay, that's a lot of Mac talk. I feel like I've been so entrenched in with I'm surrounded by people using 13-inch MacBooks that I think that is the reality. But that you're really spot on with the 15 inches the popular size because I'm just thinking back to every Windows laptop I've had. I don't think I ever had a 13 inch. Um,
mm.
but now like I feel um so much like an outlier when I have 15 Pro MacBook Pro around people that have like 13, which is kind of like counterintuitive as opposed to like the Windows verse where the 15 is like the big deal, right? Um,
So the thing is that even though the 15 is the most common, the resolution is actually pretty crappy.
yeah,
So someone with a 13-inch Mac has a better, in fact, someone with the baseline 13-inch Mac from 5 years ago
yeah,
has a better display resolution than, the baseline Windows 15-inch,
maybe for the past couple of
laptop.
years at least. Yeah, probably even
Yeah,
now.
I think they only started moving them up to full HD recently, but for the longest time they were on 768, 820, you know.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay, from Mac hardware, they moved straight to the operating systems. I think they started with iOS, then went iPad OS, then went Mac OS. Then they talked a bit
So then
about
when
tvOS.
WatchOS, they
Yes, they did watch. They
WatchOS
talked
as
about
well.
tvOS, but very briefly, um,
Yeah,
because there's not many updates there. So let's just lump OS because there's a lot of talk, right? Into
yep.
into one big ball and talk about the key things that stood out the most across the operating systems. Um, I think for iOS, there's quite a few. Many things were announced. I think it was the heaviest. It had the most new features, and the one where
Yeah.
you customize your avatar that people can see whenever you call them. I feel like that's opening up a new chapter for trolling, especially if you're like a troll and you want to put some kind of stupid photo on where every time someone's you call someone they regret giving you their number. Um,
Yes.
the whole stickers thing is kind of dope, where you can convert your photos, your live photos, into this kind of gifs that are animated in line with messages. Um,
Yeah.
WhatsApp for it, and they changed the UI and the UX for how you navigate with not just stickers but apps within iMessage. It looks different. I don't know if it's gonna take some getting used to. It's one of those things where you're like, well, I don't know if I like it or hate it, and then you start using it for like forever, and you forget what the old one was like. I think that's what's gonna be. Um,
Yeah.
but it does look neat. It does look really neat. I'll give them that. Widgets finally getting closer and closer to Android level of customization, where you can literally tap on a widget and it works without launching the app. I think that is pretty
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
One thing I expected more of, even though I don't have a iPhone 14 Pro, was I thought they were gonna talk about some new dynamic island stuff, but they did not. So I guess they've just
So
handed that to like devs, like just do you, boo boo.
no, but apparently, I think in the dev sessions they
Yeah.
did talk about, because I follow some
Some of those devs online, your
some
Twitter or
of those devs here on Twitter, and I
okay.
see that some of them mentioned some a few updates, UX updates to Dynamic Island, but I think maybe they weren't like big enough to um, make it part of the keynote, or maybe they needed to cut some things out of the keynote, and then the Dynamic Island stuff got cut. So yeah,
And them taking out the Hey out of Hey series is gonna trigger so many random phones, watches, and iPads, probably even Macs the world over. Uh, I wanted to know what you think about two things: the new AirDrop slash contact sharing, where you bring devices close to each other and they share your contact, and
Yeah,
also the journaling app. Because I don't know if you remember, I used to use the Day One app for journaling back in the day, and
yeah,
then Day One, I think they rewrote the app from the ground up, and then they made the other one obsolete, and then they brought like a subscription app. So I didn't bother like getting the new app, right? Um,
yeah.
what do you think is going to happen to journaling apps with the new journal? And what do you think about the AirDrop thing?
Okay, so the airdrop one is actually very like it looks very nice. It's typical of Apple that they'll take something ordinary and they'll put this very, very nice level of polish
Yeah.
on it, and then it looks, it feels much better. But it's something that actually existed for quite a while.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
Back in the early days of the App Store and Android and whatnot, there was an app called Bump. I think they
Yeah.
got acquired by Google that had the exact same feature where you have if I have bump and you have bump and we bump our devices together and if
Devices.
it
Yeah.
had I think it was for devices that had NFC.
Yes.
So I bump devices together, then we will exchange contacts. Then I think like if I remember correctly and it was bought by Google, then of course it will follow, Google's behavior of killing stuff.
Oh.
Now, over time,
Hmm.
there was like a wave of um, things that are getting popular, like pop sockets that had that feature, or
Yeah.
cards that had that feature, or phone cases that had that feature built in. So I guess Apple saw like that feature getting more and more popular. I still used it with someone, like someone made her business card into one of those cards that has, contact information stored in.
Yeah.
And tapped it against my phone, and then all her details, her name, profile, phone number, email, social networks, well, just on my phone. All I had to do was hit save. So those things have been getting more and more popular. You even see them get advertised on social media. So I guess Apple
Yes.
figured, might
Might
as
as
well
well.
make it a feature. Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
so
now,
and I
just to
mean
add to
the way
that,
it
I feel
looks is
like
really nice.
y- you're right. It looks really, really, really neat. They made it seem, you know how they do all the work on the back end with the coding on like Swift or whatever it is they're programming with, maybe it's C or whatever, but very likely Swift. Um, and then they make it look effortless on the surface, right?
Yeah,
And you
definitely.
have no
That
idea.
that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're
Yeah,
supposed to do when you're developing software. That's what you're
you know,
supposed to do.
and it's so nice. And another thing about AirDrop is how it leverages, I think, maybe one more secure layer of connectivity because I know it doesn't just work over Bluetooth. I think it's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and that's why
Yeah.
I think because a lot of people just hate Bluetooth tech, it struggles to evolve. Even though there's Bluetooth, I think are we on 6 now or 5? I think we're on Bluetooth
Uh,
5.0,
five
but
point no 5.2, I think.
5.2. Yeah, but
5.2.
Bluetooth has consistency issues, and not to say like AirDrop is perfect. AirDrop, like even between my own devices, sometimes fails, right? But there's always ways around that. You always like maybe know how to troubleshoot or mitigate future issues. But yeah, it looks gorgeous. I can't wait to try it uh on 17. I haven't put the beta just yet because it's just so much stress to be fighting bugs ever so often. Like so I'm not gonna.
I don't mess with betas when it
Yeah.
comes out. I mean, thankfully, thankfully the OS updates come out quickly enough that
Yeah.
I don't get impatient.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the one device that is strictly beta and no rush OS upgrade device is my MacBook Pro because it's like my workhorse. So even Mac OS, what was the one we had before Sonoma?
Ventura,
Was it Ventura? Yeah.
yeah, that's the
So
current one.
even Ventura is not on there just yet, right? Like it's that serious for me. Like I'm just like okay, I'm not in a rush to go on Ventura, so it's a no go area.
Wow.
So yeah, the second thing we're gonna talk about the app, journaling app. So how many companies have just been taken out of business by this?
So I too use the journaling app called Memento, and they too did pretty much like what Day One did,
Hmm.
where they had like a classic version, and then they kind of deprecated it over time, and then brought out another version with like a simpler UI, but for me it was like less interesting. The thing is, all the other journaling apps are like manual entry, but this one seems to be like a combination of automatic entry. In fact, it seems like it's primarily automatic entry and
Yeah.
then supplementarily, a manual entry, which is a smart thing to do because um, like there's laziness and some sort of lethargy to journaling consistently.
Yeah.
However, if the app does like some of it for you, then you might be inclined to just add, like if by the time you open it, you've seen that it has populated a few things. Maybe you just want to add one thing. You don't look like it doesn't feel like you're looking at an empty page.
Yeah.
You can just add like, oh, okay, I just want to add one sentence of something that happened today that the app didn't capture. You know,
Right.
so that's a smart thing to do. However, the UI doesn't really communicate a journal. It just communicates like, I don't know, it looks like a default app. I,
Do you
I
think it's
expected,
like a pin board, some kind of like inspiration board? Is that what it looks like? Because I feel like it's divided into some like segments. It uses obviously your GPS data, your photos, your fitness workouts. Like it's using literally every sensor like on your devices, your accelerometer, your gyroscope, everything to like say this is where you were, this is what you were doing. Like now let's make a story out of this, right? Um, I feel like for a V1, this is probably what they're like looking at. Let's just push this out. Over time, well, I don't know if it's gonna
yeah,
evolve
so
because
like the functionality.
yeah, because Apple apps barely have drastic overhauls, right? Think about it, Notes app. It keeps getting features, but it still looks like the Notes app since day one, right? Um,
So
yeah,
the thing is, like the Notes app looks like a Notes app, right? This journal app doesn't look like a journal. It looks like
it's like some kind of
I
gallery.
don't know how else to like articulate it, but I mean anyone who's used Day One or Memento,
Yeah,
those apps feel like journals, right?
yeah.
And I mean, um, even though we're not doing skeuomorphic anymore, I think this will be one case where a bit of skeuomorphism would make it
Could help.
feel more like a journal.
Interesting. I mean, now they've gone to what is a neomorphism with one product that we're gonna talk about later at the end, but uh let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, I like what you said about how, this might inspire people to like journal because it's already curating for you. That's kind of like what the large language model like AI kind of like help with nowadays because it kind of like gives you like a head start, especially if you do not trust it to have the right information. You could be like, hey, ChatGPT, give me some structure, like help me, give me an idea. And so I guess this is going to be a good segue into talking about one of the things that Apple did not talk about at DubDub. Before we get into macOS, let's talk about it. Like everybody and their uncles and aunties in the past half year slash three quarters of a year ago have been talking about AI. Not once did Apple use the word AI at this very, very lengthy keynote. That the short version, the summarized version on The Verge is about 26 minutes, just to show you how dense this show was. They didn't use the word AI once. And what did you think about that? I'm sure you noticed that as well.
Oh yeah, I did. However, they use terms like machine learning,
Machine learning.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and I guess it's a case of semantics where, like, under the hood, they might be doing similar things or having similar behaviors,
Yeah.
but what they choose to call it might be different. So even what we are calling AI, like in ChatGPT, is LLMs, large language models,
Yeah.
and Siri, or let me say autocomplete, is a form of LLM. Siri, asking Siri questions is also a form of LLM. So them not saying AI, I guess it's them trying to say we're not hopping on the bandwagon,
Exactly.
right? Um,
We don't need
because
to use
at
those words to inflate our share price.
I mean, someone made a clip of Google I/O and
Mm-hmm.
the number of times that people on stage said the
So,
words AI, and
I know, I know.
oh my goodness, it was like AI, 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 AI. It was just
It's
hilarious.
it's
So I
crazy.
guess Apple didn't want to sound like that.
I know. Always so different. Okay, now let's talk about Mac OS. I think one of the more interesting things that I wanted to touch on, besides obviously widgets, yay, on Mac. I don't know. For some reason, Mr. Federighi talked about it. Like, he was so excited about those widgets. It's like, my thing is gaming on Mac, right? I saw a video from, I think it's TechLinked, one of the Linus channels on YouTube, and
Yeah.
they talked about how Apple really understated this pivot to gaming on Mac and the kind of tools they've created to help studios and developers port their games across to macOS. And it's people are saying, in the background behind whispers that Apple seems to finally be taking gaming seriously on the Mac. I don't know if it's wishful thinking, uh, but I do feel like this is one of those things where if you're going to bring Hideo Kojima on stage and let him talk about Death Stranding coming to Mac OS and how it's going to be optimized, and you can tell about the displays on this Macs are already ridiculous, right? You're seeing like high pixel density, really gorgeous screen. How good will it be
Yeah.
if you have a game like Death Stranding playing at maybe even just 60 FPS, 60 frames per second?
I mean, you have a 120 hertz display in a 14-inch
You
monitor
do. You
that
literally
is
do.
at a 4K resolution. So, like the
Just
Apple
imagine.
hardware, and
Yeah.
then when you think about the GPU performance, although some people argue that it's not comparable to a discrete GPU from the likes of NVIDIA and AMD, but the GPU performance for other tasks like um, video editing, rendering 3D is still
Yeah.
very, very good.
Very
So,
competitive
I
too. Yeah.
mean, yeah, and like there are AAA games on the Mac. That's the funny thing. But it's just that there's so few
Greater.
of them, and those few, come in like almost as a custom type of thing, where like the dev has to
Custom
make
order.
some extra. Yeah, exactly. Where the dev has to make like some sort of extra effort to put it on.
Bespoke
And then
bespoke
maybe
Mac games.
and then maybe some are available via Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Steam is actually a very good inroad because Steam is already available on Mac. There's a lot of Mac compatible games on Steam.
Yeah.
There are a lot of games on Mac that are on Steam, but when you check, they'll tell you that because Apple changed to from x86 Intel to Apple Silicon, the
Yeah.
compatibility was lost. So they'll tell you it's only compatible on devices with Intel, or it's only compatible on devices from a certain operating system or older. So now some of these under the hood optimizations they've done to bring in more games, I think Apple doesn't seem to want to like even go near Steam, right? Because Steam is an alternate app store, to be honest, and Apple kind of doesn't like it. But again, it's a browser. Like there's only so much they can do to before it starts to look like another Fortnite situation. Um, yeah. So, uh, but I think embracing Steam is the best ways for them to do it with gaming. Um, Fix all that compatibility issue, let the compatibility layer go through Steam, and let all the devs that are already on Steam have Mac versions available to their millions of users. And then all the people who want Macs, or people who are buying two computers, one for work, one for games, or people who want Macs, but they're like, gaming is a huge part of my leisure, or even people who stream, but they want a Mac, but they can't do it because they can't game on it. You bring all those people into the fold as well. So let's see what they do with it. Um,
Yeah, it's exciting times ahead. I really, really, really want to see what it looks like when, big studios. I want to see Square Enix on there. I want to see, heck, I want to see PlayStation Studios on there.
No, that's
Um,
not going to happen.
I mean, they,
That's
they already
not going
port
to
a lot of
happen.
games to PC, right? They port a lot of
Uh,
games to PC, so they might as well, you know?
are there any PlayStation exclusives on PC?
Yeah, I think isn't it Last of Us and some other titles going there?
Last of Us is a Square. Or oh, Last of Us is Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog, yeah, but it's also PlayStation, I think. Santa Monica Studios.
You sure? Like production, not distribution.
I think distribution. Let me see. I'm just confirming here. But yeah, it's one of those things where for some reason, for a long time, I was like, wow, I've not heard. I don't know how Sony games have been on PC. Horizon, I think the first one, not Forbidden West, was the first one. Zero Dawn,
Yeah,
um, Watch Dogs, God of War is on there. Spider-Man is on there, and there's even Uncharted, right? So Sony has been, putting a lot of games on PC. Returnal is now on PC. So
that's interesting
it
actually.
really is interesting. I know. So Sony is really comfortable with putting their games on Steam and Epic's Game
Well,
Store.
I guess that's where you have that flexibility when you are the leader of console sales, so you might as well.
Might as well. You might as well. But obviously, before Ragnarok comes to PC, it might take a bit. If I don't know, I think it's still a PlayStation 5 exclusive and PS4 and 5 exclusive for now. But yeah, Sony are doing some things with cross-platform now, which I find really interesting, especially with their beef for Microsoft over the acquisition. But yeah,
Exactly. I was going to say that, I mean, on the other side of the aisle, their competition in consoles is Microsoft with the Xbox. So them putting their games on PC is like them saying, "Hey, we can come on your platform, even though we can't be on Xbox, we can be on Windows, which is also
right,
yours."
right. I'm telling you. But yeah, that's good to know. Something worth looking out for. The first time we're gonna start seeing some movement in this gaming space for Mac, I think, is towards the end of the year, when I feel the launch. I don't remember what the launch date for Death Stranding is, but I feel like towards the end of the year we're gonna have a lot of devs showcasing more things, more progress being made on porting their games over. WatchOS, not much there, honestly. Slightly redesigned UI. Um, I'm not gonna say it's something I'm looking forward to, but when it comes, I'll just take it as is, and then get used to the new operating system design. Is there anything in WatchOS that you liked?
I mean, I'm personally not even a fan of the Apple Watch or smartwatches in general.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm looking at the preview now, and I think I like that they've thoroughly deviated from this whole apps, you know, idea. Now those apps still exist, but the they're not the front line of the experience anymore.
Hmm.
So the idea of, looking at Twitter or Instagram or booking an
Oh
Uber
yeah.
or something like on your wrist when you can easily do it with your phone, that was just ridiculous and it was a turn off for me. But now they've moved to things like okay, notifications, health, uh, time, weather, and things like that, compass, heart rate, all those things, hair, and then all the stylish ways they can show time, which is which is what it is, a watch first.
Sure.
So them focusing on those things and doubling down on those things is actually good to see. I'm glad they're not going in that whole apps direction. But yeah, it looks nice, looks neat. Um, they did this card stacking thing. The
Yeah.
only like nitpick I see about it is I wish the corners were a bit rounder so it will match the corner radius of the watch itself. But that's just like my UI designers eye
Which corner radius
being
are you referring to?
of the card stacks.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they introduced a watch face that has notification cards
Mm-hmm.
with stacks of
Yeah.
notifications on it. So
Yeah.
the corner radius of those cards,
Yeah.
I think it could use just a tiny bit more rounded. But I mean, that's such a nitpicky thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do a bit of hiking, but I'm not an obsessive hiker. But there's things that talk about waypoints and helping find your way back to like your source and destination points. It's something that I want to try out this summer actually, to see how well, not like maybe not, I'm not gonna say I'll never get lost on a hike, but I always take really good care to not get lost on a hike because it's on a trail.
So the funny thing is, this use case actually came in kind of handy um, in 2023. So last year, during my grandmother's funeral, we went to the cemetery, but it's a pretty large cemetery in Ibadan, and you had to walk some ways to find, you know, the site. So I opened my Google Maps on my phone and was like pinpointing the GPS location, so that I could find my way. So that use case is actually something that is like, I mean, I haven't had the need to do that, but it's something that it's possible, right? But you never really needed to do it. And then that occasion came, and I was like, oh, well, I know that my phone can do this, so I might as well do it. So that was one
That's
interesting thing
nice.
about it.
Some of those things that you sometimes you never really think you need it, but then the moment when you're like, wait, I could actually do this, right? And it works. I like when it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of maps, yeah, offline maps I think is a big deal for me. Um, Apple
Like
has this
I'm yawning at that offline map. Like who has had it for
for
how
a
long?
minute. Yeah, the only reason I
And
use
even the
Apple,
online one is still not comparable.
I don't think it is, but for many locations, like for people who use Apple Maps, because I dabble between both. I'm this paranoid person that like I don't want Google to have too much data. I don't want Apple to have too much data, so I just like use either map whenever I want. Um,
Yeah.
But the advantage Apple Maps has in this ecosystem over Google is turn-by-turn navigation on your wrist. I don't know if
Oh,
they
okay.
just locked some kind of API that doesn't let Google Maps do this. But
Hmm.
with Apple Maps, when you're approaching a turn or intersection, it kind of like gives you like little vibrations on your wrist to just let you know that you're
Oh.
coming up to like a turn or an exit, and it's very subtle but very efficient. Especially maybe if you're like talking with someone in the car, you forgot your exit or whatever, and your watch just like gives off this very tiny haptic feedback. It's very impressive. And flyover for like major cities like Vancouver, New York, Chicago, you walk through the city before you even go there. It's pretty impressive. So offline, dope. Um, yeah, I think that's enough talk about operating systems. Let's talk about that guy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe whose stone was ripped out of his head by Thanos. So
Nice segue.
Vision Pro. Now I'll let you go first because we were chatting during the live keynote, and you expressed some interesting feelings about the device to me, and I wanted you to share it on the pod right now. Your pros and cons, like what you like and what you don't like about Vision Pro.
So, Vision Pro. Um, I don't even know where to start from. There had been rumors that Apple was going to make a VR, AR, XR, whatever headset
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while. Um, and the truth is, there was a part of me that was like, maybe Apple shouldn't enter this space at all and validate it. But there was a part of me that also felt it's inevitable, seeing how much, especially when you see how much like the Oculus Quest is getting traction, PlayStation VR is getting some traction, and all these other OEMs are like dabbling in. And so it was like, if one of those guys becomes like hugely successful and mainstream, of which the Oculus Quest has already, gotten some level of mainstream acceptance, then if Apple joined much later, it would be like too little too late. So I began to accept that it was inevitable that Apple was going to enter the space.
yeah.
However, given that they are pretty much the last to enter the space, I expected that tech-wise, style-wise, what they'd have would be sleeker uh, than what they currently showed. Now, tech-wise, they packed in a lot of tech into this thing, like the cameras, the sensors, the ones facing out, the ones facing in. It's crazy tech. It's expensive stuff. It's it's cutting edge stuff. There's a whole M1 processor inside that thing. Then there's a separate R processor inside that
R1.
thing. So it's like, um, at first I criticized it that, oh, this is basically like a television strapped to your face. But I then remembered that, I think it was Tim Cook who said, like this is a computer. So it's like a whole computer um, strapped to your face.
Some people have
Uh,
compared the price to a MacBook Pro to try and justify it, but go ahead.
yeah, exactly. Um, even though it's not yet as versatile, and
Yeah,
I guess they are waiting on third-party devs to do the rest of the heavy lifting. But to be honest, I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it looks on the face. It's chunky. It has so many lines and seams and change of form, um, which is unlike Apple. Like, I don't know. People are saying, oh, yeah, because it's the first gen. But even as the first gen, Apple likes to keep things pretty clean and neat. Like, the first gen Apple Watch was pretty crappy, right? But it was crappy in the ways that it was crappy, didn't stop it from like being the template for all the other Apple Watches that came after. Um, I think that for the Vision Pro, the following generations of this thing has to look like significantly different from what it is they've shown us right now.
agreed.
Yeah, it's
Agreed.
it's it's chunky. I mean, it doesn't look cool, not to me. Like it looks cool in like press shots, you know, on its own, on a plain white table or on
Hmm.
this light oak table, properly arranged or properly suspended. Of course, it looks cool. Um, but once you put it on someone's face and you see how like it's sticking out, how far out it's sticking out from, your eyes, and then the big cradle thing wrapped around your gore. And it's just, and then you have the wire dangling from one side. Like, come on, man. Um,
So, hmm, Vision Pro. I have quite a few thoughts. I agree with some of what you said about how even though for a first gen device, it doesn't seem to like radicalize the design for headsets that we've been seeing prior. Like, people talked about how the profile of the Google Glass from way back in the day is even way better. But there's so much to talk about here and unpack. Like we talked about, like it's essentially a computer on your head. I've heard some people refer to it as the most advanced piece of consumer tech ever created, which
that's possibly true.
yeah, it's possibly true, right? And so it's for me, just like we talked about a few days ago, it's V1. And I look at Apple's line of products. We talked earlier about the iMac, the MacBook Pro, MacBook Air. And if you know, the naming convention has always been Pro for the enthusiasts, right? MacBook Pro, Mac Pro, iPad Pro, Apple iPhone 15 Pro. And I feel like Apple came out guns blazing with Vision Pro, um, just so they can upsell majority of people on what I think they will call the Vision One. I don't know. I don't work at Apple, but I feel like if they're gonna
No,
make
it'll be a missed opportunity if they don't call it the Vision Air because it
Vision
sounds like the
Air,
word Vision Air.
right? Visionaire. So it's gonna be it could be the Visionaire, right? That'd actually be dope. So I feel like one of the things that they would do is now you see all the tech that's in the Vision Pro. You're like, my goodness, this is overkill, right? Maybe they'll take out eyesight. I know Dave 2D was talking about it on his YouTube video about how 'cause eyesight is kind of weird, right? Because it's not essentially a see-through mirror. It's cameras showing a photo of your face or whatever, like a live video
Yeah,
feed.
so it's two way. It's like the viewfinder on your camera app in your phone, right?
Okay.
Now imagine that happening on two sides, or in fact, it is happening on two sides with
Yep.
devices like the Apple, with the Samsung, sorry, the Samsung Flip and the Samsung Fold, right?
Yeah.
When you turn on the camera and then you're seeing the viewfinder on two sides of the screen. That's exactly what's happening on the Vision Pro,
With
where
the eyesight.
the
Yeah.
person wearing it is seeing a video feed. Wherever they're having passed through, they're seeing a video feed of what's going on around them. So they're not
Yeah.
actually seeing what's going on. They're seeing a video
The
feed, a
video
live
feed.
video feed.
Right.
And for anyone who's around them, who gets to see, that airy image of their eyes. What that person is seeing is a video feed of their eyes on display. That is an attempt to mimic, some sort of transparency.
Reality, yeah. And so yeah,
Um,
that's kind of like weird and off-putting in a way. And I
yeah,
don't even think even it's even more off-putting for me than the 3D avatar you use in FaceTime calls, because at least the FaceTime call is like, hey, it's 3D, it's like a dummy. It's just trying to be you, right? I'm sure when the lip sync starts, it's fake. You can tell it's fake, right? But with the eyes, which is supposed to be the windows to the soul, if someone is just seeing fake eyes, what are they seeing? You can literally say a bold-faced lie right there.
like it's no, no, no.
Um, so yeah, that's one thing
It,
that wears me out. And
it's obvious that the attempt is to make it look like it's transparent, but I think the way we are so attuned, like naturally attuned to seeing other people's faces and looking into other people's eyes, that
yeah,
no matter how high the latency is, it being a video feed on the surface, on a glass surface,
yeah,
just feels off.
I
Um,
know.
and
Yeah,
I was like, you know what? This is cool, like tech wise. But when someone puts on a pair of sunglasses, right, you don't see their eyes. So you can do without it. Like,
and that's where the Visionaire comes in, cheaper but without
uh, they,
eyesight. So,
they'll take out the eyes. That'll be the first thing to
because
go.
if you think about it, the eyesight, because back to the day to the video I was talking about, like that feature doesn't really do anything for the person wearing the device. It's for the people on the outside. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of money spent to put that thing that does literally nothing for the person who paid for it. So it's like, yeah, just take it out,
And
put
so
it in the
the idea is like if, you know, you're using the device and then someone comes around, while
yeah,
you're getting the pass-through video of them approaching you, they too are seeing like your eyes to know that, oh, you're actually looking at them,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But like I said, yeah, we are so attuned that, I mean, they've already advertised it to us, so it's not even like it's a trick or so you know that, oh, you're approaching this person, but what you're seeing is not their eyes. You're seeing a video of their eyes.
I know,
I
I
don't know.
know. This is one of the top two or top three cringe moments during the presentation. The other one was like the dad in the living room, like with the kids, and
Ah,
then like your kids are
ah.
there having a good time. You're there in the kitchen with them with like a headset. And sure, you want to take a 3D photo, but how do your kids feel with you like, walking around the house with a headset? They should never put that. And then the airplane one, that was so weird. Like you're in a like if I'm in a tube flying 30,000 feet, the last thing I want to do is wear a headset and not be able to see my immediate surrounding. I'm not gonna envelope myself into some alternate reality space. I want to be
So
present
that's the one where I actually disagree. Other
because I feel like
than
you want to disappear on the plane, right? You don't want to care about what's happening in your flight.
yes, especially if you're flying economy
Oh
and
my days.
you're not on window seats.
Are you
If
one of
you're
those
not on window,
guys? Are you one of those guys who like pray throughout an entire flight?
nah. I pray before and after.
Okay, just checking. Just checking. Yeah, yeah, but well, yeah, you're right. It could go either way. For me, it's like a no, because I want to be present. As much as maybe if the idea for like AR, VR headsets for me, as much as I try to be present, is just like one of those things that's gonna take a lot of warming up for me to actually, warm up to it. And
I'm all screened out, right? Like
yeah,
between laptop, tablet, and smartphone,
mm-hmm.
I spend, you know, so much
Same,
time.
same.
So I mean, I've got a TV I barely use.
Yeah,
Um, I'm all screened out.
yeah. I'm wait. I wait
Maybe
for
I'm
this.
now the old man shouting at the clouds.
No,
I'm
no, you're
I'm at that
just
part of my life.
you're just a rational person. I think you're just a rational human being. I want to say this though. Like last summer, I had the chance to try out Microsoft's HoloLens at NAB
Ooh,
in Vegas. I think it's
yeah,
HoloLens 2 actually. It was pretty
yeah.
cool. You wear it on your head. You see a 3D interface or like a building, like a structure come out in front of you, and you can actually play around and navigate with the 3D avatar. Nobody talks about that much because I think Microsoft itself is not really pushing HoloLens to be that much of a consumer product. And I'm going to share this in our group. I just realized no one ever talks about the price, the cost of a HoloLens. So I shared it in one of our groups, the collective. You should check it out. And the HoloLens, the cheapest one, can you guess how much it costs?
I'm guessing it's probably like in the thousands, probably maybe as expensive as uh
The Vision
ah,
Pro?
no, maybe like 1,500, like a
No, the
thousand five
cheapest
hundred dollars.
HoloLens you can get is $3,500.
Aha, so that's where Apple got it from.
That's exactly what I think happened. There's the next tier for the HoloLens is 4,950, and there's another tier that's 5,200. So I'm
Wow.
looking at this HoloLens, which Microsoft
So
barely
that's
hypes.
that's probably what Apple's actually going for.
Yeah,
They're going for the HoloLens, not for Quest.
now for
At
Quest,
least, at least
for the
for
Pro.
price points and you know the user type. So the users are like, okay, people who want to be able to um, look at work stuff. I'm imagining people in like engineering who want to look at 3D stuff in 3D space. However, they didn't even show much of that. They showed people looking at photos and people looking at videos and people browsing the 2D web. I'm like, seriously, like, you
Have you
can
seen that
show.
meme of like Vision Pro headset, but instead of photos of like your family and friends, it's like pop-ups like you accept these cookies now.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, come on.
No, I'm very sure that's what Apple's original template idea of what this thing could do is, and they will leave it to the devs to create like a whole universe. You saw what happened with Disney Plus's presentation. Um, so I think it's just like there's gonna be way more industrial stuff coming in because they had their mostly their apps like the mail app, the photo app. Those are like Apple apps, right? What I would have loved to see, the only time it showed like a pro app was I think Final Cut, where the guy transformed it from his Mac onto the HoloLens, which I think is going to be one of those things people would do where they like
But
carry
that's
apps.
still like, that's still a 2D experience. Now, there's nothing wrong in having 2D experiences on, like you said, it's a computer basically. So I expect that this is supposed to be some sort of computer replacement, as it were. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a 2D experience on a computer replacement device, especially because that's already the type of interface that everyone is used to. But if you're going to show this as a new way of computing, as computing in the third dimension, or you even give it a new name, spatial computing,
Hmm.
um, you have to go beyond showing us mail, photos, videos. Like you have to show me one classic example was someone wearing it and looking around their room and placing virtual furniture and basically doing like interior design. That would have been great. That would have been a great example, right?
But
Or
that's
someone,
easy peasy. I'm sure that's gonna come out soon. Because ordinary with your like phone, you could bring Apple products through AR into your real
yeah,
space and
yeah.
test
So
it out.
stuff like
So
that. I mean, they've been doing that with phones for how many years now? So stuff like
for a
that would
minute
have
now,
been,
yeah.
or someone doing it well, despite the weight of the thing, but maybe someone on a treadmill and they're wearing it, and instead of them, it's projecting them like as
On
if
a
they're
trail.
running outside, exactly on a trail, and then giving them HUD stats. That's those are like more interesting, more compelling things than
Yeah.
me seeing, like a 2D web page
I
or
mean, I do like how those glass UIs kind of like cast shadows in your actual space, though.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool, but it still feels very two-dimensional. Like it's something I can do in Figma, for instance. You
Yeah.
know,
Don't worry, I'm sure it's gonna go insane when these devs lay their hands on it. Because I feel like people who do, um, what's this night sky app called where you could basically look at constellations, right? They might just put one in your living room and you can move the stars around, or maybe move the globe around or something. Like I'm sure it's gonna get
yeah,
crazy
like a hair,
intense.
or even like well, education market. See, the thing is, you can't do that with education, but it's possible that, say, like a parent might give it to a kid, even though
Hmm.
it's a very expensive thing to give to a child. But basically,
Visionary,
like
visionary.
maybe you're,
Yeah,
maybe you're teaching the child like anatomy, right? And so you
yeah.
can show, okay, you know, tell your brother to stand, and then give the child, and then child is looking at their brother, and then the thing is projecting like the muscular system
Also,
or the skeletal
skeleton.
system,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And you can say, oh, this is the femur, this is that,
bro.
those are like,
Trust that those
those are
things are
more,
coming. Trust that because
well,
this thing is way too powerful to just be dumb, right? I mean, sure,
exactly.
we said the same thing about the iPad. We just started getting pro apps in 2023, but but
No, no,
a
no,
lot
no.
of this
The iPad
device,
has been getting. So the thing is, what
I
happens?
mean, pro
What
apps from
happens
Apple,
with this?
basically, yeah. But
What happens is that they come out with products. They release very simple apps, and then third-party devs come and
they
develop
run with
like
it.
more interesting stuff. And then Apple comes back and says, "Okay, we've seen what you guys can do. Now let's put our own." Like, I mean, DaVinci Resolve for the iPad came out before Final Cut Pro,
I mean, but
right?
the closeness between the release doesn't speak to like whether Apple rushed it because you could tell like the Final Cut is fully fledged. So they were probably working concurrently, and DaVinci went to market first, right? Because
Yeah, 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 sure.
imagine them coming out with Final Cut in 2 weeks, right? That's just not feasible.
Of course not. Of course not. Of
Yeah,
course not.
but I see what you're saying. Yeah, DaVinci Resolve, super powerful app, and for some reason, no, maybe not for some reason, if you got like an iPad Pro with like a A12 and 2 years later it's becoming obsolete, it's quite painful, which is like my my situation right now. I have an iPad Pro that when it launched it was like the best thing since sliced bread, but now I can't even install Final Cut because it requires an M series chip, and I can't use
Ah,
some advanced features in DaVinci because I require an M series chip. So it's like there's no way I'm going to upgrade this brand new quote unquote iPad overnight just because I want to run Final Cut, right? So I'll just
yeah.
stick to my basic features and Resolve and edit my videos on my computer for now. But yeah, I just wanted to share that little rant about that. But yeah, HoloLens 3500 a pop if you want to get the basic version. Even the dev kit is 3500. Um, so it's interesting. I just found that out today, but it was a good experience with the Hololens. I feel like a lot of people who tried Vision Pro said it's the best headset they've ever tried, but it's still just a headset. So until we see something different from Apple, maybe a redesign. This is V1, like we always talk about. Let's see what V3 looks like. Let's see what V4, V5 looks like. And another thing I will talk about is haptics, because we interact with our phones or watches or whatever ever so often. But if you interact with something in the AR space with Vision Pro, for example, like people talk about the butterfly demo where it would land on your finger, but then you feel absolutely nothing.
Mm.
It made me wonder how one would incorporate those kind of senses into this operating system without having some extra physical hardware attached. That'll be a very interesting challenge for Apple to solve.
So, when all the rumors, like as WWDC approached, and all these rumors for the headset were, galvanizing, I was looking into like all the existing um, AR VR headsets, and I think there was one I shared with you, HTC Vive Focus.
Vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually like a light version of the main HTC Vive. I think the premium version is Elite, which is a bit chunkier. But this light version um, looks like as close to a normal pair of sunglasses as a VR headset can get. Um, and they did something interesting where you can pair it with your phone and use your phone as a controller. Now, if you're doing that, then you can maybe get some sort of haptic feedback from the phone, um, so that Apple doesn't need to like create any third device,
Yeah.
uh, as a controller like all the other VR headsets do.
Yeah. Really interesting to see. But yeah, so our verdict on this headset is that hey, Leo, hey, it's still a headset, even though it's probably the most advanced one ever. But Not everyone is crazy about it. Let's see where it goes from here. See, I mean, fair to Apple. Like the iPad was dissed on when it came out. The AirPods were called stupid when it came out. The Apple Watch was crapped on when it came out. This is, I think, the first device category in years that has had like mixed, way more mixed reception than it has like naysayers. I think so. That's kind of like a weird spot to be, because there are way more people who were pessimistic about all the other categories I mentioned prior than the
I
headset. I would think.
honestly I doubt that. Like I don't like there were naysayers for every there will be naysayers for every new product
Talking
category.
about like major news outlets that made it sound like, remember, the iPad was like crapped on by
Yeah, so
major.
the iPad was crapped on because people said, oh, like the main criticism of the iPad was it's basically just a big iPhone, right?
Yeah, you don't need that
Um,
much screen. It's useless.
it wasn't even that you don't need that much screen. It was that you have all that much screen, and all you're showing me is the same interface that I'm already used to seeing on the iPhone. And so, to be honest, I think that was a legitimate criticism, and Apple took that criticism and, you know, um, made better use of the iPad display, which I think they would have done eventually, even if people didn't respond in that manner
It
to
was
it.
like where
And then
everything was V1. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and then third-party devs again, took it home. Um, the watch, the thing that people complained about was performance, like, oh, you giving us, a phone on our wrist, and yeah, advertising, people doing all these, like all the apps that they have on their smartphone, but like it's super slow. Which my own argument was that they shouldn't have pumped it with all those apps, which have pared it down, which is the advice. They've taken that advice and they've done that now. So they've de-emphasized, all the app actions. So
And I think
um
that's what's happening with like the watch launch was, I think it was more scattergun than anything. Like they hadn't figured out what people were going to be using it for. I think now, if you notice, they've narrowed more on like fitness and health, and then everything else is just like add-ons. But when it first launched, it was like an everything device, which people were like, man, what the heck, man? I'm not gonna text you on my wrist, you know. I'm not gonna, add a calendar invite on my wrist, But they went back and they're like, oh, so people, okay, let's focus more on fitness and health, sleep tracking, all this kind of stuff. And is that the future of Vision Pro, where it like becomes a 2, 3 feature device? I don't see that happening with all those sensors. um, but it will be nice to see. Um,
what would happen is or what I believe would likely happen is people will gravitate around some maybe two or three primary use cases, and everything else will be auxiliary. Um, for the Oculus, for instance, gaming is like the big thing, even though Zuck is trying to position it as social work, this thing. But gaming is like everybody puts it on, everybody goes straight to play Beat Saber or whatever. So with Snapchat, we even forgotten Snapchat spectacles. There's like putting all these like funky filters in your environment and all that. So uh, people will just like cluster together around a few use cases, and then when Apple sees that, oh, these are the things people would rather use these things for, Apple will double down on those things. That's what I think is likely to happen. That's what they did with the iPad. That's what they did with the watch.
yeah, true stuff. Oh man, this has been a packed conversation. I feel like if left to our own devices or vices, whichever camp you're on, we'll talk about WWDC forever. But this has been a fun one. I'm sure we skipped a lot of things. We can't obviously talk about everything. There's just so much, especially not just during the keynote, but after, right? Like some of the things you mentioned with Dynamic Island. But this has been a good episode. This is one of those things you listen to, when you're doing your chores. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and thank you for listening.
Yep, yep.
All right, until next time, this is Backyard Conversations. Over and out.